Hi, my name is Emily. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about something that is something I'm experiencing right now, which is being stuck in a story. And sometimes it's easy and you just have to do a few things to move past that sticking point. But then there's other times where you have to do something more drastic. So I've got 5 things that I suggest that you do if you're stuck in a story. Let's check them out. All right, so when you are stuck in a story, I don't necessarily mean you have writer's block, but that might be another way to say it. I don't like to say writer's block because it kind of has negative connotations, and it also kind of brings to mind the idea that you just are blocked and cannot get past it unless something special happens. Now, as a former ghostwriter, I spent 8+ years writing for other people. I wrote stories of various lengths in various kind of different categories and really found myself in certain places where I just needed to get unstuck fast. So I had to find creative ways to get unstuck. I'm going to share 5 of those with you today. The first one is really simple and it's take a walk. Quite honestly, most of the problems that I've experienced in the past when dealing with stories or story problems have been solved by just letting my mind take a break. I mentioned this in a class that I taught a couple of weeks back, but James Scott Bell, who's an excellent author and also writes some really amazing books about writing, has talked about letting the boys in the basement do their work, but I like to make it my own, so I call them the ladies in the lounge. But what that really means is that you are letting your mind not specifically focus on your story. You're letting it wander, or you maybe are giving yourself a guided focus for where you're at in the story, but not while you're sitting in front of your computer or while you're writing anything down. You're just letting your thoughts brew and percolate. Yes, I love coffee, so those are my go-to examples. But you're letting those things kind of simmer so that when you come back, you're more ready to jump back into that world. I have been unstuck so many times by just taking a really good walk. No podcast going, no audiobooks, maybe music if it's instrumental and that helps you, especially if it helps you get into your world. But more than not, I just go in silence and walk until the story starts to unravel for me. The second thing, you have to be careful, because if you are like me and when you're in drafting mode, you need to be in drafting mode, not editing mode, but it might help you to go back and review some of what you've written before. Now, this is not, I'm going to start from the beginning and rip everything apart until I get back to this point. Maybe if that's your process, you need to do that. But what I mean is more read back a little ways to up to the point where you're at and ask yourself the questions of what is it that needs to happen next? What have I been leading up to that I haven't yet delivered on those promises? What needs to happen way far in advance? And kind of like get the flow of where your story is at. So do a little bit of review there, but be cautious. Don't let yourself get into like editing mode unless you're okay with that and you have the time to, just because I've found that my editing brain is very different than my drafting brain and I need to keep those separate. So to me, reviewing is reading maybe a couple of chapters before or even less than that to help myself get unstuck. Number 3 is huge, and I know that this is not going to be easy for some of you because you may not have an amazing writers group like I do, but talk to your writing friends. If you are on Instagram and you want to connect with me, reach out. I'd be happy to help you get unstuck if I can. But what I have found is going to my writing buddies and saying, hey, this is where I'm at. I need your help. Now, this might look like specific story questions that you have. How does this character do this thing? Or why would they do this thing? But it also might just be, honestly, that you need some emotional help. Hey friends, I don't really want to write today. Can you give me something to make me want to write? And I have found my friends are great to do that. So if you can find yourself some writing friends, maybe if you're looking for a writing buddy, comment below and say, hey, I'm looking for a writing buddy. Share what genre you write in and maybe something a little bit about you, and maybe we can make some connections down there. Number 4, I don't personally do very often, but I have done it a few times, and that is to skip ahead. There are certain places in my current work in progress that are just a lot and kind of hinge on a lot of things coming together and working out. And so in some cases, it might be helpful to just skip ahead. Maybe you write in something needs to happen here, and then you start in the next chapter. Or if you kind of have an idea like a battle scene needs to happen here, and then you move on to that next phase, the next scene that you have in your head, at least you've given yourself something to work on that you can go back, look at, and say, okay, this is what I was heading for. I find this to be really helpful, especially when you're getting maybe towards the climax of your story where a lot of things need to happen and it's hard to kind of visualize all of them. And so it might feel like, oh, I know that something big needs to happen here, but I just can't figure out what it needs to be. Well, you might actually see it later if you continue on and then find yourself maybe a couple of days down the road saying, oh, if they had gone to this place, then the thing that I want them to do now makes sense. And there you go. And then number 5 is probably going to be the least popular, but it is one that as a ghostwriter, I just embraced, even though I hated it, and that is to push through. No, it's not fun, and no, it doesn't feel great, because I think we as writers really want to feel creative and artistic, and we want to have our nice scented candles going, our cup of coffee or tea or beverage of choice right by hand, and just the perfect atmosphere and setting for all of our writing sessions. But as I talk about pretty often, especially on my Instagram page, writing is not always easy, and that hard work is a good thing. So when you find yourself at a place where you're stuck and you're not really sure what to do, try all of the things that I've listed. And at that point, if you're still feeling stuck, write anyways. Now, I know that seems counterintuitive. You're like, well, what do I write, Emily? And that is a good question. If you are someone who does not plot, then you don't have anything to go back on. So I would suggest just saying, well, okay, probably using number 4 to jump ahead to the next thing that you can see them doing, write that instead. That's what pushing through looks like. Now, if you're a plotter, that might mean you go and you say, okay, this is what I said had to happen next. I don't feel like it's the right thing to do, but I don't know what else to do. Write that anyways. Even if you trash it later, the act of writing is going to help you get unstuck. I don't really know a lot about mechanics, but I feel it's like, when maybe your bike tire chain thing, whatever, is not really working and you add oil to it, you actually have to get a few rotations going before that oil is evenly dispersed. Same thing is true with writing, in the sense that sometimes just sitting down and making yourself write is the best way to do it. So out of those 5 things, what do you think you're going to try next when you get stuck? Tell me in the comments below. And also, if you haven't yet, would you take a moment to subscribe? I talk about writing on this channel. I'll also talk about books, but I also talk about my own books, which are coming to Kickstarter March 14th. I am so excited for this 3rd book to release, but don't worry. If you're new to my series, which is a young adult science fantasy that's a little like Skyward meets the Lunar Chronicles, and then book 3 is like Red Queen, kind of, then you're gonna love this series, and you can get the chance to get all of the limited edition hardcovers all at once in this Kickstarter. Thanks again for stopping by, and as I like to say, go boldly and write.